Welcome back to the False Prophet channel. In this segment, we will be exposing more of the false claims of Islam. And in this segment, we will be focusing on Surah chapter 2, verse 106. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Right now, I want you to focus your attention on the verse in front of you. We have the Arabic at the top, and we have the English translation at the bottom. Now, let's read. It says, and this is the Sahih International Translation. It says, "We do not abrogate a verse or cause it to be forgotten, except that we bring forth one better than it or similar to it. Do you not know that Allah is over all things competent?" Now, what this verse is saying is, and it's very self-explanatory, it's not ambiguous, it has no hidden meaning, very easy to understand. In this verse, you have Allah supposedly revealing to Muhammad that he does not cause Muhammad to forget anything unless he brings something forth better than what Muhammad forgot, or something similar to it. And the background history of this verse and the reason why it was revealed is because during the time when Muhammad was on his mission in and around Mecca, earlier in his prophethood, he was being accused of forgetting things and saying something different the next day. So this is why Allah supposedly, and I say supposedly because we know that Allah is the devil, but this is the reason why Allah revealed this verse to Muhammad so that he could tell his followers that, if he forgets something, that Allah will bring something better. It was basically an excuse for him to not be exposed. So when they were making fun of him and saying, "Oh, Muhammad, every time you speak to us, you're always saying something different, and you're coming up with different passages and verses each and every time." So this is basically why this verse was revealed to Muhammad. Okay? Now, notice what it says. That Allah does not, number one, Allah is the reason why Muhammad forgets a verse, because it says that Allah is the one who causes it to be forgotten. Okay? And if he causes it to be forgotten, Allah himself, keyword, himself, will bring forth a verse that's better or similar to the verse that was forgotten. So Allah, he won't bring back the same exact verse. He will bring back a better upgraded verse, or a verse that's similar but not the same. And I want you to keep that in mind as well, because by the time we get to the end of this video, we will review all of these points and you will remember the key points. So I want you to keep that in mind, so when I start targeting the key points, you will remember the argument, which is a irrefutable argument that's about to destroy the claim in Islam that Muhammad is the final messenger. And by the time we end this video, you will understand why Muhammad is not the final messenger. Okay, so what we have so far is, number one, write this down if you have to. Number one, Allah, the God of Islam, the God of Muhammad, the God of the Muslims, he is the one who causes Muhammad to forget a verse. Not Satan. Not Satan. He is not the one who causes Muhammad to forget the eternal words of Allah. No, it's Allah himself. So remember this. Number two, I want you to remember that Allah himself said he would bring a better verse or a similar verse to replace what Muhammad has forgotten. So it's two things that he can do. Allah can A, bring a better verse, or B, bring a verse that's similar. Okay? Now, what are we getting at? At this moment, I would like to, we're going to go to Sunnah.com. Now, Sunnah.com, this is a very good website because it's ran by Muslims and the Muslims can't say that, we are retrieving this information from a Islamophobe hate site. You know how they like to use that excuse. Oh, you're just an Islamophobe and you're hating and you are jealous. They'll say anything to try to make you shun away from exposing Islam. It's just one of their shaming tactics whenever you expose something in Islam. That's what the Muslims do. The first thing they like to say is Islamophobe. But that's why I like to go to Sunnah.com. Okay. As a matter of fact, I got it already bookmarked. So let's go to okay, it's right here. So in front of us we have a hadith, and as you see, it is from Sahih al-Bukhari. So this is a good, authentic hadith. So the Muslims can't say that it's not good. They can't say it's da'if. They can't say it's rejected. This is a very good hadith. It's in Sahih Bukhari, book 66, hadith number 60. Okay? Now let's read what it says. Narrated Aisha. This is the 6-year-old wife of the Prophet of Islam. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet heard a man reciting the Qur'an in the mosque and said, "May Allah bestow his mercy on him, as he has reminded me of such and such verses of such a surah." And just a side bar thing, I find it real comical how the wording in these Islamic translations, like, they come up with the funniest stuff to say. I don't know who taught them English, but they pick and choose some of the most ridiculous words. Like the way, even the Quran itself, how it's written, some of the words they use, it sounds funny, you know. But let's read it again. The Prophet heard a man reciting the Quran in the mosque and said, "May Allah bestow his mercy on him, as he has reminded me of such and such verses of such a surah." So, what stood out to you in this hadith? Remember what we said. In Surah 2, 106, it says that if Muhammad forgot a verse of the Quran, that Allah himself, remember I told you to remember that key word, himself. It says that Allah himself would bring back the forgotten verse to Muhammad. And let's be exact. It says Allah himself would bring back something similar or better than the forgotten verse to the memory of Muhammad. Now, what did Muhammad say in this particular hadith? Let's read it again. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet heard a man reciting the Quran in the mosque and said, May Allah bestow his mercy on him, as he has reminded me of such and such verses of such a surah. Right then and there, Muhammad condemned his Quran and he made Allah a liar. See, on this channel, it's not really us exposing Islam. The sources of Islam will expose Islam. Muhammad himself will expose Islam. Allah in the Quran will expose Islam. So I could really stop the video right here and just say Islam is done, because I found Allah lying in the Quran. But it gets so much better. It gets so much better. Okay, so that's the first strike against Allah and the Quran. So with that alone, we can toss the Quran in the garbage can. Because already the promise of Allah is broken by what Muhammad just said. Because Allah said he would remind Muhammad of the forgotten verse. Okay? But guess who reminded Muhammad? It was the unnamed man that Muhammad prayed that may Allah bestow his mercy on him. And it says it clear as day. As he has reminded me of such and such verses of such a surah. So right then and there, Allah lied. Okay? Because Allah didn't remind Muhammad of the verse. The man in the mosque reminded Muhammad of the verse. So should we end the video here? No, let's keep going. It gets so much better. Now, what else can we find wrong with this hadith as it relates to Islam in correlation with Surah 2, 106? What else can we find wrong with Islam that they claim? Okay? They say that the Quran is without error. We already pointed out an error because the promise of Allah has already been broken because he didn't remind Muhammad of the verse. So that's one thing. So what's the next thing we about to destroy? What's the next thing we are about to destroy? The claim that Muhammad is the final messenger. How do we know that's not true? Muhammad just proved it himself. Again, we don't have to say anything. We can just sit back and watch the comedy of Islam unfold before our very eyes. Muhammad, he just talked so much. He forgot some of the things he said. He forgot parts of the Quran as you see before you. How can a prophet of God forget something? How can you forget something that God himself gives you? Can you imagine if Jesus was amongst his disciples and if he forgot one of the sermons that he told the disciples and the disciples had to remind Jesus? Can you imagine the disaster that would be for Christianity? But anyway, save your laughter till we end the video. Now, this man that Muhammad heard in the mosque, he is really the final messenger of Islam, not Muhammad, okay? And basically, Allah set Muhammad up to be exposed, to be a liar. And one thing about liars, they always end up telling more lies to cover up the lie, the previous lie that they told. And they always get themselves busted. Because one thing about lies, it's not the truth. And lies, they pass away. You don't remember lies, but you never forget the truth about something. Because the truth is something that is embedded and imprinted upon your soul. So you don't forget things like that. So that's another reason why you know that the Quran is not the truth, because if it was, it would have been embedded and imprinted upon the soul of Muhammad, and there's no way he could have forgotten it. Okay? But let's continue on. Now, what did Surah 2106 say that's so devastating when you apply it to this hadith? You know what it is? It says that Allah would bring a verse that's similar or better than the verse that was forgotten. So what does this mean? If Muhammad is the so-called final messenger of Islam, all of that went out of the window the moment he forgot parts of the Quran. Now, what I'm about to tell you will create a huge dilemma for the Muslims who try to refute this video. And I'm going to tell you why. The first dilemma is when Surah 2106 says that Allah himself will remind Muhammad. We know that didn't take place. But more importantly, the man who reminded Muhammad of the verse, this is the dilemma the Muslims will be in. Surah 2106 says that Allah will give Muhammad a verse better or similar in meaning. So the man reminded Muhammad of the verse, but he didn't give Muhammad a verse that was better or similar in meaning, because he reminded Muhammad of the same verse that he forgot. Because as you notice in the hadith, Muhammad doesn't say, oh, you gave me a different verse. No, Muhammad is saying, you reminded me. When somebody remind you of something, they bring something back that you once knew to your recollection, to your memory. But that's not what the Surah 2106 says. It says that Allah himself, not some man reciting the Quran in the mosque, would bring a verse back to the memory of Muhammad. No, it said Allah himself. So we have two lies already exposed by Allah. The first lie, Allah himself didn't bring the verse back to the memory of Muhammad. And the second lie, the man who reminded Muhammad of the verse, he didn't bring Muhammad a similar verse or a better verse. He reminded Muhammad of something, the same thing. But Allah said he'll bring Muhammad something better. So that's two lies right there. Now, the second thing is, let's say if the Muslims try to say that the man let's say if the Muslims try to say that the man who reminded Muhammad of the verse, if he brought Muhammad a similar verse or a better verse, guess what? That would make the man who reminded Muhammad of the verse the final messenger of Islam, because he would have brought Muhammad a verse that was new to Islam, because the word similar is not the same. Something can be similar, but that don't mean it's the same. It's different. It's just similar. Something better is not the same. It's better. It's upgraded. Okay? So this is a Muslim dilemma. This hadith creates an Islamic dilemma. Okay? Because if they try to deny that this man didn't bring a better or similar verse to Muhammad, then they are calling the Quran a lie. Because Allah himself said that if Muhammad forgot the verse, that Allah would send him something similar or better. Okay? If they say this man only gave Muhammad something that he already knew, they are still calling the Quran a lie, because Allah said that he himself would bring the verse back to the memory of Muhammad. And he didn't say he would bring the same kind of verse. He said he would bring a better verse or a similar verse in meaning. So either way they try to go, Islam is still busted. Their prophet is busted. Allah is busted. Okay? So this man, in order for the Quran to be true, the man who reminded Muhammad of the verse he forgot, this man, in order for Islam to remain true, according to the Quran, this man would have had to bring Muhammad a similar or better verse back to his memory. And that would make the man that Muhammad heard reciting the Quran the final messenger of Islam. Because he brought something to Islam that Muhammad himself didn't bring. You see? So the Muslims say, no, he didn't bring something new. Guess what? Either way they try to go, it gets the Quran busted, as we have already explained. So this is, in my estimation, the greatest dilemma ever upon the claim that Muhammad is the final messenger, because it gets the Quran busted from every angle. We prove that Allah is a liar. We prove that what he said is a lie. We prove that Muhammad is not the final messenger. So many ways you can take this. Okay? And another claim that we are about to bust. We may as well do 2 in 1. We may as well do 2 in 1. Another claim we are about to bust is the claim that the Quran is an uncreated book. Ask yourself this. How can something that's eternal and uncreated be replaced with something similar or better? Okay? Because in Surah 2:106, that's exactly what Allah said he would do when he calls a verse to be forgotten. Because as you see in this hadith, Allah is the one who calls Muhammad to forget the verse. He told you in Surah 2:106 that he's the one who caused Muhammad to have amnesia and forget the verse. Okay? Now, ask yourself, how can the eternal uncreated word of Allah be replaced with something similar or better? Now, the only way that it can be replaced is by this reason right here. Either there are 2 uncreated Qurans, or the word of Allah is created. That's the only options you have. Either there are 2 uncreated words of Allah, or the Quran is created. The word of Allah is created. It's not eternal. Because if it can be replaced with something similar or better, that means the something similar or better must already exist, because the words of Allah are uncreated. Ooh. Because if Allah is the one who causes something to be forgotten, and is the one behind replacing what is forgotten with something similar or better, that means it's still his word. Just because it's similar or better does not mean it's not the word of Allah. If it's going to be in the Quran and the Quran is uncreated, that means the words that will replace the forgotten verses must also be uncreated, because it all falls under the category of uncreated. So now we have revealed something new that Muslims probably never knew and non-Muslims probably never knew. And that is that there are two versions of the Quran. You have two uncreated Qurans. You have a backup version of the Quran, which is uncreated just in case the uncreated is forgotten. I mean, does it even make... Do you see the mind collapse of this Islam? It goes against all logic. It just... How can Allah say that he causes Muhammad to forget, and he did cause him to forget the Quran, and then turn around and say he will replace it with something similar or better? Do you see how many Pandora boxes that opens up? Let's go into these boxes that are opened up by these statements. Now, we already revealed that there are two uncreated Qurans. And another thing on top of that is, it simply means that the Quran that the Muslims have, it means that the uncreated Quran that Muslims have has always been uncreated, and has always been uncreated of a lesser value than the uncreated Quran that can replace the uncreated Quran if one of the verses are forgotten. So that means, because he said he would ask something similar or better. So that means it has to exist already. There has to be another uncreated Quran, because to replace something in the Quran, it has to be the words of Allah, and the words of Allah are uncreated. So he is not selling wolf tickets by saying that he can do something. He's telling you that he can replace it. So if he can replace it with something similar or better, that means it already exists. And this creates another dilemma for the Muslims. Because if Allah is telling you that he can replace it with something similar or better, you can't say he's just creating it on the spot. Because then you are saying that the words of Allah are not uncreated, and they can be created on the spot. If that's the case, then you can't say that the Quran you have is uncreated, because you say that the attribute of the word of Allah, you say that the Quran is one of the uncreated attributes of Allah. So you can't say that he can replace a forgotten verse with a verse he just creates, because no, it's still the words of Allah. So that proves that Allah has two Qurans. It's two uncreated Qurans. And that means that for all eternity, there has been another uncreated Quran, the word of Allah, that was better than another uncreated word of Allah. So now, Muslim, so now questioner, so now skeptic, you got to ask yourself this: how could for all eternity one word of Allah be greater than another word of Allah? Do you hear what I'm saying? How for all eternity? Now, these are the words of God. He's supposed to be perfect. So how can there be another perfect word of God, of Allah, greater than another perfect word of Allah. Because if you ask the Muslim if the Quran is perfect in its uncreated state, they will tell you yes. So then, ask yourself this question. How can you out-perfect perfection? The Muslim will tell you that the Quran that they have is perfect. How can you outdo perfection? Because in Surah 2106, Allah is telling you He can replace the perfection of the perfected Quran with something better than perfection. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. It don't make a bit of sense. But these same Muslims who talk about the Trinity, which can be explained, mind you, which makes way more logical sense, because you can see the Trinity expressed throughout many things in creation. These same Muslims will doubt the Trinity, will doubt the concept of the Trinity, and will try to mock and make fun of the Trinity. But these same Muslims will accept an idea like Muhammad, like the Quran can be replaced by another perfect Quran. That the perfection of your perfected Quran can be out-perfected by another perfect Quran, but both of them are perfect at the same time. They can accept something as illogical and irrational as that, and at the same time have the audacity to talk about the Trinity. Save your laughter to the end of the video, because this is not funny, really. It's really sad. It's really sad that millions and millions of people have been bamboozled by this scam artist, this scam con artist from the 6th century named Muhammad. There's no way they can refute this. No way whatsoever. This is absolute insanity. So I'll end this video right here, and maybe I'll do a part 2, but I think this is sufficient enough. We have proven that Allah lied. Let's do a recap. Allah lied. He said that He would replace the verses with something similar or better. We proved that He didn't do it. It was the man in the mosque who did it. So that's the first lie. We proved that He didn't remind Muhammad. It was the man in the mosque, and He didn't provide a better or similar verse. So that's 2 lies right there. So you can throw the Quran away. It's busted. Then we have the dilemma where, in order for the Quran to remain true, the man in the mosque would have to had brought a better or similar verse, which he didn't. But to keep the Quran true, he would have to, which means he would be the final messenger. And if they say no, he didn't, then it proves that the Quran is a lie, because Allah said He would bring something similar or better. So either way they try to do it, either way they go, they stuck. They stuck. Their feet are stuck in the mud. Nowhere for them to go. So this is what you call in chess, this is checkmate. This is it. The Quran is busted. Islam is busted. The claim that Muhammad is the final messenger for mankind is busted. It's all destroyed with Surah 2:106. Also on this channel, we have another Quran passage that we talk about that destroys Islam, Surah 41:11. So after you view this video, you should go over and view the other video we have on the channel. But yeah, this video destroys the claim that Muhammad is the final messenger of Islam. I'd like to thank you all for watching. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe, hit the likes button, share this video, share it to your Muslim friends. This will help in evangelizing and and spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ. Spread this amongst your Muslim friends, you know, post it everywhere that you can. But this right here gets Islam busted for sure. And there's no way that they can refute this. And once again, this is the False Prophet channel. And we are signing out.